At exactly 5:17 p.m., the sound of screeching tires tore through the quiet of the gas station. A young woman stumbled out of her wrecked car, blood on her forehead, terror in her eyes. Without thinking, Ethan dropped his wrench, sprinted across the lot, and dragged her from the flames just seconds before the tank exploded. The next morning, instead of praise, his boss handed him a pink slip. "You abandoned your post," he sneered. But what happened 3 days later shook the entire town. Let's begin. The last bolt Ethan Price ever tightened at Granger's Auto was on a busted 2008 Ford pickup with a rusty frame and a leaky radiator. He wiped his hands on an old rag, sweat dripping from his temple despite the chill of the late October air. Then came the noise, sharp, loud, chaotic, a crash. A woman's scream. He dropped everything. Across the street, a black Lexus had plowed into a roadside pole. Smoke spiraled from under the crumpled hood. Without hesitating, Ethan vaulted the small chain barrier between the auto lot and the road, sprinting toward the wreck as onlookers stood frozen. The woman inside was barely conscious, her lips quivering, eyes glassy, blood trickling down from her hairline. "Ma'am, can you hear me?" he called out, yanking at the locked door. "Hey! Stay with me, don't close your eyes." No response. Smoke poured out, thicker now. A small flame sparked near the undercarriage. Ethan kicked the window. The first hit did nothing. The second cracked it. The third shattered it completely, slicing through his knuckles. He reached in, unlatched the door, and pulled her out, arms around her waist, dragging her just far enough before... Boom! The blast knocked him off his feet. Flames swallowed the car whole. The shockwave threw bits of glass and plastic across the sidewalk. People screamed. Ethan shielded her body with his own. As flaming debris scattered, she coughed. "You saved me," she whispered faintly. Her fingers gripped his torn shirt, but even as adrenaline pumped through him and sirens wailed in the distance, Ethan didn't know that someone had captured it all. A grainy phone video, zoomed in, shaky, but raw and real, would travel farther than he ever imagined. By 7:42 a.m. the next morning, Ethan stood in his boss's office, hands still bandaged. Granger didn't look up from his desk. "I saw what?" "You did, Price," Ethan exhaled. "Yeah, I know I left the shop, but You left the shop during business hours, walked out. I saved someone's life." "We run a business, not a charity," Granger spat. "Your shift wasn't over? That customer's truck is still sitting there unfinished." "I'll fix it right now, You're done. Turn in your badge." Ethan stared in disbelief. "You're firing me for saving her?" Granger finally looked up. His eyes were ice. "This isn't a hero camp, it's a shop. Get out!" Ethan's hands balled into fists, but he said nothing. Not because he wasn't angry, but because of the quiet truth in his gut. He had nothing to fall back on. He'd been living paycheck to paycheck ever since Claire, his ex, walked out on him and took their son, Levi, halfway across the state. He was barely hanging on. Rent overdue, gas tank near empty, and now, no job. He stepped outside, the cold biting into his jacket, and stared down at the grease-stained pavement. Behind him, laughter echoed from inside. Granger and the other mechanics, probably calling him Captain Save-A-Stranger. He walked away without a word, but somewhere from the backseat of a black Cadillac parked across the street, someone had watched everything and wasn't laughing. The wind cut sharp across Main Street, carrying the smell of burnt rubber and diesel. Ethan shoved his hands deeper into his worn jacket pockets as he walked, each step heavy with a bitterness he couldn't swallow. A life saved, yet no thanks, no paycheck, no mercy. Behind tinted windows, the woman he had saved, now dressed, in clean clothes and a navy blue coat, watched silently. Her driver glanced at her in the rearview mirror. "Ms. Carlyle, do you want me to follow him?" "Yes," she said softly. "Stay back. I just want to see where he goes." Her name was Savannah Carlyle, and she wasn't just some random woman in a car crash. She was the sole heir of the Carlyle Group, a private equity firm worth $1.6 billion. The accident had left her shaken, but not blind. The man who pulled her from the fire wasn't a superhero. He was a regular guy, dirty boots, split knuckles, pain in his eyes, and no one else had moved that day but him. She watched as he walked down the road, past closed shops and flickering signs, past people who didn't even glance his way. He entered a rundown corner diner. Inside, Ethan took a seat by the window, ordered nothing, just sat, hunched over, staring at the table. The waitress, a woman in her late 50s with a soft southern drawl, came over. "You okay, sugar?" she asked. He smiled faintly. "Don't suppose I could just sit here a while without ordering?" She looked around. "Ain't busy. Stay as long as you want." That tiny kindness cracked something in him. "Thanks." She poured him a coffee anyway, slid it in front of him, and walked off without asking for a dime. Ethan stared at the cup, steam rising. Everything in his life felt like it was slipping through his fingers, except that one moment, pulling Savannah from the flames. That was real. He didn't know she had followed him there, that she was standing outside, watching him from the sidewalk now. And when she saw the waitress hand him the coffee, and his eyes fill slightly as he nodded in gratitude. Savannah's jaw tightened. "He saved my life," she murmured, "and they threw him away like trash." Back at her penthouse suite in the city, Savannah picked up her phone. She had full access to corporate lawyers, PR firms, and media strategists. But today, she wanted something else. "Can you get me a list of every employee Granger's Auto has fired in the last 2 years?" she asked her assistant over the line. A pause. "Of course, Miss Carlyle. May I ask why?" "Because tomorrow," she said, staring out over the skyline, "they're going to wish they never crossed him." The next morning, Ethan woke up on the couch of his small one-bedroom apartment, a notice on the door, "Final eviction warning." He didn't have the strength to open it. Instead, he made a list, on paper: mechanic shops, construction yards, tow truck companies, anywhere he might find work. He shaved, dressed, limped out with a resume so smudged it looked like it had been pulled from the wreckage of a fire itself. That's when he saw the black SUV pull up outside his building. The door opened. Savannah Carlyle stepped out. Ethan froze. She looked completely different now, polished, professional, but no less human. Her eyes held a seriousness that demanded attention. "You," he said, stepping forward. "You're okay. I mean, I am. Thanks to you." She smiled. "Good. That's really good." She looked him over. "You don't remember me, do you? I mean, yeah, I pulled you from—" "No, before that." He blinked. 10 years ago," she said gently. "You helped a teenager change her tire in the middle of a thunderstorm on Highway 29. You wouldn't take any money. You just said, 'Try to do something kind for someone else later.'" His mouth parted slightly. "That was you," she nodded. "I never forgot it." Ethan was speechless. Savannah took a breath. "Now let me do something kind for you. Come with me." "Why?" "Because I've got a job offer, and I think you're the only one in this town who deserves it." Ethan hesitated, hand gripping the doorframe of the complex. "A job offer?" he asked, voice rough with disbelief. Savannah gave a small nod. "I'd like to talk. Somewhere comfortable. Neutral." He studied her. Designer coat, manicured, nails, confident stance. But there was something in her expression that felt familiar, sincere, not the kind of rich sympathy that came with hidden strings, but real, human concern. All right. They drove in silence for a few minutes until she directed her driver to a quiet cafe just outside city limits. It was upscale but empty at this hour, polished wood floors, soft jazz playing low, servers attentive yet invisible. They took a booth in the corner. Ethan didn't touch the menu. "So what kind of job is this?" Savannah leaned forward. "I run a foundation. It funds recovery programs, trauma support, second chances. I've seen a lot of people fake heroism for a photo. But you ran into fire for a stranger and didn't even post about it. I'm not looking for a handout, he said quickly. It's not. I need someone to manage logistics for our outreach garage initiative, help coordinate free repairs for single moms, veterans, people who can't afford to fix their cars. It's based in Nashville. I need someone who knows engines and people. His throat tightened. Why me? Because when I was 17 and scared on that highway, you showed up. And when I thought I was going to die in that car, you came back again. Ethan looked down at his hands. I haven't run a team before. Hell, I haven't even led a lunch break. Savannah smiled slightly. You're not applying. I already decided. He blinked. You... what? I've done background checks. Checked references, quietly, of course. I know about your son, too, and what your ex did. You've had every reason to give up, but you haven't. That matters. Silence stretched between them for a moment. You'd have a team, full salary, housing covered, health insurance, and Levi, if you ever want to fight for custody again, this would help. Ethan's heart thudded. It was too much, too fast. Too good. What's the catch? Savannah looked him dead in the eye. Only one. You can't go back to thinking you're worthless. That's when something in him cracked, not in a dramatic, tearful way, but quiet. Like a wall inside him had finally leaned forward and let the light in. All right, he said, voice low. When do I start? Savannah smiled. Today. Hours later, Ethan stood in the center of a sleek garage space, newly built, fully stocked, high-tech tools lining the walls. There were already cars waiting outside, a woman in scrubs, with a busted headlight, a veteran in a wheelchair with a cracked windshield, single moms, bus drivers, forgotten people, just like him. But today, he wasn't forgotten. Savannah handed him a clipboard and patted his shoulder. You run this now. Make it count. He stared at her. Why are you really doing this? She looked at the garage, then back at him. Because 10 years ago, someone told me to pass on the kindness. I waited too long, but I'm not waiting anymore. By late afternoon, Ethan had grease on his hands again, but this time it meant something. He tightened the last bolt on a battered minivan suspension, straightened up, and waved over the young mother pacing near the garage's entrance. All good now, he called out. Safe to drive, no charge. She looked at him, eyes wide. You're serious? He handed her the keys, completely. Her hands shook as she took them. I didn't know what I was going to do. My kids, they need this van to get to school. Ethan simply nodded. Take care of them, that's all I ask. Tears filled her eyes, but she turned away quickly, muttering a thank you as she drove off. By 6 p.m., 3 more vehicles had rolled in. A quiet veteran named Tom with a busted transmission, a nurse with a leaking oil line, a college student whose car coughed every time it started. And through every repair, Ethan kept moving, focused, steady, like he had waited his whole life to finally belong somewhere. But not everyone was cheering. Back in his hometown, Granger leaned against his office window, sipping from a chipped mug, scowling at the screen of his phone. The video of Ethan saving Savannah Carlyle had racked up nearly 1.2 million views online. Somebody had recorded the moment the flames burst behind them. The woman's unconscious form, Ethan's bleeding hands, the explosion, the shield, the heroism, and now everyone was tagging Granger's business in the comments. This the shop that fired the hero. Never spending a dime at Granger's again. Y'all should be ashamed. His reviews had plummeted from 4.6 to 1.8 overnight. Someone even spray-painted the word coward across the garage door. He threw the mug across the room. Price, he snarled. You want a show? I'll give you one. The next morning, Ethan showed up at the new garage to find a large manila envelope sitting on the workbench. Inside, a court summons. Granger had filed a lawsuit, claiming breach of contract. defamation. Damages, false representation, all lies, but dangerous lies. Savannah stepped in the moment she saw his expression. "Let me guess," she said, pulling on gloves. "He's making noise." Ethan nodded grimly. "Trying to ruin me." Savannah glanced at the paperwork. "We'll destroy this in court." Ethan's jaw tightened. "I don't want you caught in the middle of this." Too late. "I am in the middle of this. Ethan, I don't fund cowards. I invest in the ones who don't quit." He stared at her. This woman who didn't owe him a thing but had handed him a new life. "You sure?" She leaned against the car lift. "Let me show you something." She walked him to the front office, where a tablet displayed the garage's website and donation tracker. It had blown up overnight. Local press had caught on. Sponsors had started calling. On screen, a number blinked, $3 to $12,900 raised in 24 hours. All because of one man's courage and one woman who wouldn't let it be buried. Ethan swallowed hard. That night, while cleaning tools, a voice caught his attention. "You always this good with an impact wrench?" the man asked with a smile. Ethan looked up to see a clean-cut man in a gray suit and dark glasses standing at the garage entrance. "Depends. You buying or just watching?" "I'm a representative for Carlyle Group's philanthropic branch," the man said, handing him a card. "Ms. Carlyle asked me to scout for long-term leadership. She thinks you might be ready for something bigger." "Bigger than this?" Ethan asked, stunned. The man smiled. "Much bigger." 2 weeks later, Ethan stood beneath the towering steel framework of a brand-new facility in Nashville, hard hat on, clipboard in hand, watching contractors buzz around like bees. Unlike the modest garage he'd just left behind, this one was 3 times the size, with 5 bays, solar panels on the roof, and a community lounge inside for struggling families to rest while their vehicles were repaired. He wasn't just the head mechanic anymore. He was the director of Carlisle Outreach Auto Services, a title he never asked for, never dreamed of, but now wore with quiet pride. Savannah had called him that morning. "You'll have your own team. Pick whoever you want. You're not just fixing cars, Ethan. You're rebuilding dignity." He looked around now, still overwhelmed by how far things had come since the explosion. The ache of poverty hadn't vanished, but it no longer defined him. That weekend, Ethan took a day off for the first time in years. He drove 200 miles to a sleepy suburb, stepped out of a rental car, and rang a doorbell with trembling fingers. The woman who answered had sharp cheekbones, tired eyes, and a tight smile. "Claire," he said softly. She blinked. Ethan, behind her, a small boy's voice called out, "Mom, who is it?" Ethan swallowed. I just wanted to see him, say hi, maybe buy him a burger." Claire folded her arms. "You get a new job or something?" He pulled out a laminated ID badge and handed it to her. She read it slowly, lips parting. For the first time her wall cracked. "Carlyle, you work for them?" "I run one of their national programs now." Claire hesitated, then stepped aside. "You've got an hour." Ethan stepped in, and the second Levi saw him, the boy lit up like a firework. "Dad!" They hugged. Long, tight, like 2 halves of something broken finally fitting back together. Elsewhere, Granger sat in a courtroom, his tie crooked, his face red, as the judge dismissed the case with prejudice. Savannah's legal team had shredded every claim. The video evidence, the witness statements, the public backlash. It had all sealed his fate. His business had already lost its biggest contracts. No employees left, no second chances. As he stood to leave, beaten and exposed, Savannah herself brushed past him in the hallway. She didn't stop, but she whispered just loud enough for him to hear. "You tried to bury him. All you did was plant a seed." 6 months. Later, news vans crowded outside the Nashville Center as Ethan stepped onto the small stage during the grand opening ceremony. Savannah stood beside him, clapping proudly as he spoke. "I was a nobody once," he said into the mic, voice steady. "I lost everything, got fired for doing the right thing, but someone showed me kindness, and I realized, sometimes, it's not about what's taken from you, it's about what you build after." Cheers rose from the crowd. A local journalist asked from the front row, "What would you say to your old boss now?" Ethan paused, then smiled. "Thank you for firing me. You set me free."